Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to really getting up to speed on the big issues. And today, we're diving into something major, a conflict that basically just erupted. And it's shaking things up globally. We're talking about June 13th, 2025. Decades of this, shadow war between Iran and Israel. It didn't just boil over. It exploded. Open warfare. Reports are talking about jets, drones, missiles, skies lit up from Tel Aviv to Tehran. It's intense. So we've gathered a whole stack of analyses, reports, trying to unpack how this hidden conflict suddenly went, well, loud. Our mission here is to pull out the key insights, the really important stuff from these sources, to give you that quick, solid understanding. Because this conflict, it's really changing the game. So let's unpack this. What exactly happened? Why now?
Right, and it's really key to get that this wasn't sudden. Not really. It feels sudden, but the sources we've looked at, they make it clear this is more like a culmination. Decades of tension, strategic moves. It was kind of like coded into the region's DNA, you could almost say. A big driver, Iran's nuclear program. That's been a huge point of tension, especially for Israel, for years. And despite sanctions, serious global pressure, Iran kept pushing forward, expanding enrichment capabilities, especially at those really hard-to-reach sites, dug deep into mountains like Fordo.
Fordo, yeah. That name keeps coming up.
Exactly. And what's interesting, or maybe critical to understand, is that for Iran, this isn't just about maybe getting a weapon down the line. It seems deeply tied to their sense of national identity, their security posture. It makes just, dialing it back much harder than signing a piece of paper. It really shows how that drive for what they see as essential security can just override pretty much everything else.
Okay, so Iran's pushing on the nuclear front. What about Israel's side leading up to this?
Well, Israel's stance, particularly under Netanyahu, shifted more and more towards what's called a preemptive doctrine, basically acting first, not waiting to be attacked, but potentially striking before an attack even seems imminent. And this wasn't just talk. It was backed up by those new alliances they built in the Gulf, during the Trump administration years.
And Abraham Accords and related deals, right?
Precisely. So you have these two sort of determined paths, Iran advancing its program, Israel adopting a more aggressive preemptive posture. What we're seeing now is, it feels like the inevitable collision point of those trajectories. It really makes you ask, okay, what happens when these huge, seemingly unfixable tensions finally just snap?
And snap they did. So The stage was set, the tension was there. What was the actual spark? The sources point to Operation Rising Lion on June 13th. What was that? How big was it?
Operation Rising Lion. Yeah, that was the trigger. Israel launched this really sweeping aerial attack. We're talking over 100 targets hit deep inside Iran. And key nuclear sites were on that list. Natanz, Arak, Isfahan, places we hear about all the time in relation to the nuclear program. This wasn't a small pinprick strike. It was large-scale, coordinated.
That scale is staggering. But something else jumped out from the sources, something almost out of a spy novel. The alleged role of Mossad agents inside Iran, disabling air defenses.
Yeah, that's a game changer, isn't it, if those reports are accurate?
How so? I mean, beyond the obvious tactical advantage.
Well, it takes it beyond just a military strike. It blends kinetic action bombs and missiles with deep espionage, with psychological warfare. It suggests an ability to infiltrate, to undermine defenses from within. That sends a chilling message. It's basically saying, we're not just outside your borders. We can reach right into your heartland, disable your defenses, and strike. It's profoundly psychological.
A powerful statement indeed. But Iran didn't just take it. Their response was fast, dubbed the Wrath of the Ayatollah. What did that look like?
Immediate and forceful. Iran launched hundreds of missiles, ballistic missiles, and those kamikaze drones as well, directed at Israel. Now, Israeli defenses, like Iron Dome and others, they reportedly intercepted a lot of them, a significant number. But, and this is crucial, some got through. They breached the defenses.
And the targets? Were they purely military?
That's the really alarming part. No, not purely military. Reports confirm hits on Israeli research facilities like the Weizmann Institute, but also civilian targets. Critically, Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba was mentioned in several reports, a major hospital.
Hitting a hospital. That changes the calculus.
It does, and it points to the immediate human cost. We're seeing reports of civilian deaths, sadly, on both sides, mass displacements of people fleeing the fighting, internet blackouts being reported, particularly in Iran. It underscores that this isn't, surgical warfare, whatever that means. It's systemic. It hits ordinary life, infrastructure, everything. Reading about schools moving underground in Israel, the blackouts, It's grim. It really hits home how disruptive and terrifying this is beyond just military moves.
It's devastating. And as you said, it's easy to focus just there. But the sources emphasize this isn't contained, is it? It's sending shockwaves globally.
Yeah.
This isn't just Iran versus Israel anymore.
Not at all. It's shaking the whole global order. You pull on this thread and you see it connects everywhere. No major power is really untouched by this.
Okay, let's walk through some of those connections. The U.S. obviously is central. What's the pressure there? I saw reports mentioning former President Trump's comments, too.
Right. The U.S. is under huge pressure.
Yeah.
Do they intervene? How much? How directly? And yeah, those comments attributed to Trump, saying, and I think the quote was, "We may take out Fordo ourselves." Even as a comment from a former president, that throws gasoline on the fire.
How so? What does that specific comment do?
It injects this massive uncertainty, the prospect of direct U.S. military action against a site like Fordo. That drastically escalates things. It forces everyone, Tehran, Washington, allies in the region, everyone to recalculate. It makes an already incredibly tense situation even more unpredictable.
Okay. Then there are the Gulf states. They've been building ties with Israel, economically, technologically. But Iran is right next door. They must be in a tough spot.
Extremely tough, caught right in the middle. You have Israeli tech investments on one side, Iranian missiles potentially aimed at you on the other. So their reaction, according to the sources, is mainly urging restraint, almost desperately. They're worried about the conflict spilling over, sure, but also internal stability, fears of uprisings, major economic damage. It's a nightmare scenario for them.
What about the other big global players? China, Russia. They have strong links with Iran.
They're watching very, very closely. Both have significant ties to Tehran. This conflict could really shift things within that BRICS group: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Their alignment could be affected. And for China specifically, there's the energy security angle. They rely heavily on Middle Eastern oil. Any disruption there hits their economy directly. So they have a huge stake in what happens.
And India, another huge player, lots of citizens in the Gulf.
India's trying to walk a tightrope. Maintaining neutrality is key for them. Like China, they're heavily dependent on oil from the region. But their immediate focus seems to be on protecting their large diaspora, the millions of Indian citizens working in the Gulf, and keeping those vital trade routes open. It's a delicate balancing act.
And underlying all of this economic anxiety is the Strait of Hormuz. Remind us why that's so critical.
It's perhaps the world's most important choke point for oil. Something like 20%, a fifth of the entire world's oil supply flows through that narrow strait. If that gets closed, whether deliberately by Iran or just because the conflict makes it too dangerous,
The impact would be
catastrophic for the global economy. One analyst used the phrase, it would make global markets burn hotter than the deserts of Iraq. Prices would skyrocket, supply chains would break. It could trigger a genuine worldwide economic crisis. The stakes are incredibly high.
Which brings us back to the terrifying question everyone's asking. What happens next? Could this go nuclear?
Look, the consensus in the analysis seems to be that nuclear escalation is unlikely, but the same analysis adds not impossible. And hearing not impossible in this context is deeply worrying. Right now, it seems like a deadlock, a really dangerous one. Israel keeps signaling, subtly or not so subtly, that they could take out Fordo, even without direct American help. Meanwhile, Iran. The sources say they show no sign of backing down.
Just digging in.
Exactly. Defiance from both sides. It leaves the immediate future incredibly uncertain. Volatile.
One source summed it up pretty starkly.
Mm-hmm.
The world is waiting on a razor's edge.
Mm.
So what does it all mean? Where does this leave us, this conflict? It feels like it could genuinely rewrite the map of the Middle East. Or, maybe worse, just plunge it into decades of chaos.
It really feels that way. The potential outcomes are that stark.
And as we've sort of unpacked today, war in 2025, it looks different, doesn't it? We're seeing cyber attacks, AI likely playing a role, hypersonic weapons, these targeted killings.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your grandfather's battlefield. But, and this is the crucial thing, beneath all that new tech, the consequences feel timeless. Fear, loss, the struggle for power, those things haven't changed.
That's a really important point. The tools change, the fundamental drivers often don't.
So, for you listening, as you try to make sense of this rapidly changing world where conflicts like this could just flare up, maybe the takeaway is how vital it is to look critically at the information coming at you.
Yeah.
Understanding these modern conflicts means seeing both the new tools, the cyber, the drones, and those, well, ancient human drivers behind it all. Keep asking questions. Stay informed beyond the headlines. It's more important than ever.
Absolutely. Curiosity is key.
We'll be back next time to dive deep into another critical topic. Thanks for joining us.